In this video, we'll be going over how to do preventative maintenance on the face with the auto feed, auto width adjust option. You'll want to start by opening your movable fence to approximately 40 inches and then properly powering down your machine, going through the shutdown sequence. Once the machine has been properly powered down, we will want to lockout tag out the electrical power to the machine. So we'll throw this down and then put a lockout tag on the knife switch so nobody else can turn it on. In addition to locking out the air on the main drop outside the cages, it's important to lockout tag out the air to the specific machine that you'll be working on right here on the main drop. This is our FRL assembly, filter, regulator, lubricator. This filters out water and any other contaminants that may be in the incoming air. The regulator adjusts the pressure to the whole machine. That's always set to 90 PSI. And then the lubricator is supplying oil and lubrication to the lines that need to be lubricated. So that should be filled up. And on the top here, the dial should be set to number 4. It's important at the end of every shift to blow the machine off of any standing dust using compressed air, as well as checking the dust collection units for any blockages and clearing those units as necessary. On a weekly basis, you'll want to be checking your filter for contamination and seeing if it needs to be cleared out. You'll also want to be monitoring your regulators to make sure they're maintaining the appropriate pressure, and checking your lubricator to make sure that the level of oil is sufficient. Here we have the regulator for the assist tank for the top set of face tools. Here we have the regulator for the rail blow off. And down here we have the regulator for the bottom assist cylinder. Every 2 weeks, you'll want to inspect your feed belts for proper tension and excessive wear, as well as checking your feed eyes here to make sure that they're still tight and they haven't come loose, both the cable connector and the eye itself. On that same 2-week interval, you'll want to inspect all your air lines for rubbing or kinking, as well as clean all your ball rail and bearing shafts with a clean, dry cloth. You'll also want to be checking your lubrication and topping off the oil level, as well as checking to make sure it's not contaminated. If it's milky or cloudy in any way, dump the entire reservoir and refill with clean, new oil. Every 2 weeks, it's important to grease your ball screw nuts. There's 2 on this machine, one located here and one located down here. Every 8 weeks, you'll want to check your chains for proper tension and adjust accordingly, as well as checking all air cylinders for leaks and fixing those accordingly. Every 8 weeks, we will want to check the ball rail shafts themselves for pitting or any kind of physical damage, as well as lubricating the bearings themselves and cleaning the shafts with a dry silicone lube and a clean cloth. When inspecting the cylinders, we will also want to clean and lubricate the cylinder shaft themselves with dry silicone spray and a clean cloth. Once a year, it's important to do a nut and bolt check on the entire machine. However, the most likely area to have a loose bolt would be on the cutting head itself due to the excessive vibration and movement of the carriage and the cutter heads themselves. So we'll want to check all bolts on the head here. Once a year, you'll want to inspect doors feeding into the machine and out of the machine and make sure the transitions are still smooth and not bumpy, and if necessary, adjust the height of the machine at the leveling pads to accommodate for any roughness in feeding. Once a year, you'll want to remove the lubricator canister and the filter and wash them out with warm soapy water to clear them of any debris that's been trapped in there. And then every 8 weeks, you'll want to be sure to lubricate all non-ball screw bearings, including the rotational bearings for the feed and the width adjust, as well as the linear bearings for the ball rail on all tools and all servo axes of motion. The drive shaft for the width adjust chains is located in this back frame tube. There's a support bearing in the center, as well as support bearings on the ends where the sprockets are attached. You'll want to be lubricating these every 8 weeks. The X and Y axis of motion is controlled with a rack and pinion assembly. So there's a planetary gear head here with the pinion gear on the underside. The servo motor goes into the planetary gear head. There's a lubrication canister that is performing the lubrication automatically. It has a low level sensor that will let you know when the canister is getting low and needs to be replaced. There's a gear rack down here that the pinion from the planetary gear head meshes with and drives the axis of motion along this axis. This machine has 2 rack and pinion assemblies. The second one is located here by the assist cylinder tanks. It's the same servo motor and the same planetary gear head, along with the same lubrication canister over here underneath the air tanks. When it's time to replace the lubrication canister, you'll disconnect the hose from the bottom of the old one, put the new one in, connect the hose, and then connect the control wires to the junction provided, as well as connect the low-level limit wires to the junction provided from the old canister. On both sides of the machine, there's a doorstop assembly that moves on a servo. So you'll want to be greasing the bearings on both sides here and here on that 8-week interval, as well as inspecting these belts for proper tension or excessive wear. When it's time to change tooling, it's important to measure the tool length before we loosen or remove the tooling, because we'll need to install new tooling to the same length. This looks to be about 1 7/8 inches. I like to use a ruler as opposed to a tape measure, just because there's no play in it. And the total tool length can be very critical, because if it's not set correctly, the two tools can actually collide into each other. So using the wrenches provided, we'll put the spanner on and the hex on, and loosen these up. And remove the old tool and put the new one in, reversing the process. You want to snug the nut up, but leave it loose enough to adjust the total tool length. So I'm a little long, right there at about 1 7/8 inches. And then we'll tighten the tool up. Putting the spanner wrench and the standard wrench back on, tightening them back up.